Welcome! Another interesting topic from the modern era is the various scams people resorted to in the countries of the former communist bloc in order to survive or to get rich quickly. In the Wild East, we saw criminal gangs operating almost freely, politicians who became businessmen, and oligarchs who wielded immense power in the 1990s. In Hungary, a nationwide scam started. It was known as oil bleaching or olajszőkítés in the local language. Let's see what it meant. Initial developments that led to the great calamity of the 90s originated in previous decades. In the era of communist rule and cheap Soviet oil, tens of thousands of Hungarian households acquired simple oil heaters. They were considered to be convenient tools that helped make cold winter nights more tolerable. Already in 1969, the government introduced a 30% discount on home heating oil, HTO, which was essentially the same as diesel oil, so demand quickly increased tenfold. A few years later, in 1975, once the oil crisis hit the country, the Central Committee ordered that large companies should reduce their energy consumption, so some of these state enterprises started buying HTO at its lower price. The practice was thus born, but nobody thought that one day, once diesel cars became common, millions of ordinary people would do the same. Interestingly, at that time, West Germany already had this problem, with many people buying heating oil for their diesel cars at the lower subsidized price. However, German police reacted and harsh punishments were implemented for those caught cheating. They could even lose their cars. In the 1980s, foreign truck drivers took this illegal practice with them to Hungary, where three different prices were available. HTO cost 4 forints, diesel oil cost 10 forints, while foreign vehicles could buy the latter at 20 forints per liter. To circumvent the restrictions, gas stations started pumping HTO into oil trucks that could resell this oil to foreign buyers at a much higher price. According to some estimates, more HTO was burned this way than the entire city of Budapest needed for heating. Once the communist regime fell and free elections took place, private companies gained the freedom to import oil on their own. Diesel cars started to become more popular, so demand also increased, leading to the establishment of an oil mafia. The situation was made worse by the first freely elected democratic government, which feared losing popularity at a time when existing export markets collapsed, hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost, and the population quickly became disillusioned with democracy. Gas prices were going up. In the fall of 1990, this led to the famous taxi blockade, with thousands of taxi drivers blocking the main routes in Budapest. The conservative government, which was already unpopular, soon gave in, but they maintained the large subsidy on heating oil, so the difference between the two prices became enormous. Diesel oil now cost 3 times as much. The authorities tried to prevent the further expansion of this lucrative business. Imported oil was examined at the border, usually at the first train station. Oil that was designated as heating oil was mixed with ferrocene to give it a distinct red color, making it impossible to sell it as diesel oil. However, many customs officials were bribed. They simply forgot to add the dye to the oil, so it could still be sold at gas stations in large quantities, earning a huge 100 to 200% profit. Soon, more restrictions followed. Households could only buy limited amounts of HTO, and gas stations could no longer sell it, but this did not stop those who had the proper connections and authority. Allegedly, many high-ranking policemen, military officers, and even politicians were involved, up to the highest circles of the government itself. Some people became filthy rich, while others, detectives, customs officials, members of this oil mafia, disappeared or committed suicide, sometimes by shooting themselves in the back of the head, which is not a particularly easy feat. In 1993, a government committee was created in order to curb illegal activities, but in the next heating season, 350 million liters more HTO were consumed than was actually needed by households. It became increasingly difficult to avoid coloring the oil at the border, so criminal gangs started transporting the imported HTO to remote farms where it was stored in large tanks. Sulfuric acid was added to it to remove the red color, then calcium hydroxide was used to neutralize the acid, and after a few days, once this mixture sank to the bottom, the oil was sucked out and sold at gas stations as diesel. This was the process of oil bleaching, which provided the name for the entire business, olajszökítés in Hungarian. Unfortunately, those who wanted more profit could not wait days. They sold a mixture of oil and acid to their customers, and you can imagine what this mixture did to the sensitive parts of the internal combustion engines. For a while, major car manufacturers considered leaving Hungary as the number of warranty requests exploded. Too many people were buying cheaper oil, which came with some acid in it. This did not happen, and the new socialist government started adjusting the legislative background from 1995. In that year, the prices of heating oil and diesel were merged, the previously enormous difference disappeared, which made many rethink their role in this illegal business. Others, mainly those who had larger companies and import licenses, continued, but they switched to petroleum derivatives like industrial oil, spindle oil, and cooking oil. These entities, many of whom existed on paper only, sold such products as diesel oil and forgot to pay the import duties, further increasing their bottom lines. So much oil was imported in Hungary in the early 1990s that total European demand could have been satisfied. How much of it was sold within and outside the country later on, nobody knows. The good times lasted until 1998, when a new excise duty was imposed on all petroleum products to be collected immediately. This effectively ended the business of oil bleaching, but it came too late for those who had died during these years for knowing too much. Those who had become rich and survived continued to enjoy life. In 2000, the conservative government set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the alleged cases of corruption. A key witness, Zsolt Nógrádi, who claimed to have been a member of the oil mafia, made allegations regarding well-known politicians and public figures. According to him, Sándor Lezsák, former president of MDF, the conservative party that had been in power between 1990 and 1994, cooperated with the criminal groups, along with Sándor Pintér, Minister of the Interior at that time and even today. A report published by the Prosecutor General's Office listed 4,300 offenses, smuggling, counterfeiting, and customs fraud from the 1990s, but no evidence was found against the public figures. More than 300 people were sentenced to prison, but many accused could not be located. The names of some of the alleged godfathers emerged in that period. Gábor Drobilich, Tamás Portik, and László Radnai were among them. All three spent time in prison, but while Drobilich remained silent until his death, Radnai allegedly testified in his mafia case, and Portik became public enemy number one after several assassination attempts and murders in the late 1990s, and was forced to leave the country. He returned in the early 2000s as a businessman, but he was eventually sentenced to prison in 2016. Most cases are still unsolved. Police investigation continues, but while new information emerges from time to time, we will most likely not get all the answers. The 1990s remains an era of chaos and wild capitalism that gave a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to some and destroyed others. Thank you for watching. See you next time.